Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing my product review for the Dash My Mug ice cream maker. There's a lot of ice cream makers out on the market and most of them are pretty expensive like the Ninja Creami. Can an ice cream maker that's under $40 really do a decent job? Watch this video and find out. So you ready? Let's get into this. Just a quick note, my reviews are based upon the things that I think are important. That might be a little bit different for you, so what I recommend doing is after watching my video, you watch a couple of other videos made by different content creators. That way you get a wider range of likes and dislikes and testing criteria. That in turn should help you make a more informed buying decision, and that is the most important thing of all. This is the Dash My Mug ice cream maker. I bought this in a bundle, so it actually comes with two of these mugs, one little motor like this, and one paddle. The way these things work is really simple. On something like a Ninja Creami, you would mix all your ingredients and freeze the entire pint, and then when you were ready to eat your ice cream, you'd process that in the machine, which is basically a blender with a different type of blade on it. Other than that, we have a couple of different types of machines that work on a really similar premise. You have machines like this one that just have a little bowl with a certain type of gel on the inside. If I shake this, you can hear it. To freeze that stuff up, you just leave this in your freezer for a day or two. That gel would freeze up and that would make this inner bowl here really cold. Then you would just put on your motor, just like that, start it up with this button, and then while it's running, you'd pour all your ingredients into that hole. Then after about 20 minutes or so, you've got finished soft serve style ice cream. The third type of machine is really similar to this, except instead of taking a bowl and having to stick it in the freezer, you've got a compressor on the machine that cools that bowl with electricity. That way you don't have to plan things out and you can have ice cream pretty much whenever you want it within an hour or so. As far as this machine goes, it's about as simple as it gets, but it's also about as cheap as it gets too. There's other ice cream makers like this that work on the same principle, but those tend to be around $80 or $90. But they usually make about a quart or a quart and a half of ice cream. This one will do a maximum of about 1 cup. You can probably fit a tiny bit more in here, but I found that it really starts to overflow this thing if you get any more than that in there. So I wouldn't really recommend doing that because you end up making a big mess. One of the problems you see with the larger 1.5 or 2 quart machines that are made like this is the fact that the longer you have those bowls in the machine and churning ice cream, the more those bowls are defrosting. More ice cream in the bowl means it takes longer to make your soft serve ice cream, and also the temperature of those bowls are coming down the entire time. This guy does have an advantage in that department, seeing as how there's so little space in here. Whatever you put in here is going to be frozen long before this thing defrosts. Unless of course you're putting it in there hot, which obviously you're not supposed to do. But the parts of this machine are obviously the mug, and the part with the motor has 3 separate pieces. You got your ABS plastic paddle. You got the plastic guard right here, which actually comes off, just like that. This comes in really handy to clean this. And then you have your actual motor base. With this, it's just really simple. You push the button and turn it on. Once in a while this is running, it'll stop and change directions by itself. To turn it off, you just push the button again, and it's off. The motor on this is 120 volt and 12 watt. That would seem like it's really wimpy, but that 12 watts does equate into a pretty good amount of pressure, because if I have this going just like that, if I push my finger on this, that's really hard for me to get it to stop. So it does get the job done, and I wouldn't imagine that it would really need to be any more powerful than that anyway. When you put this on, there's a little cutout right there for the power cord, so you know which direction it goes on. And that's because when you put this away to store, this is actually designed to sit upside down right in the bowl, just like that, so it takes up a little bit less space in the cabinet. The thing about that is I kind of wish they made some way for this to attach someplace on the bowl. I don't know, some kind of hook or something. Or maybe even if they just design this to be a tiny bit bigger so this could sit in the bottom of the cup there. Maybe even if there was a cutout on the bottom for it just to snap in there or something like that. I think that would have been a lot better. One other thing to note about this is that These cups are probably going to be in your freezer all the time anyway, because it doesn't do you any good with those sitting in the cabinet someplace. Especially seeing as how this needs 1 or 2 days to freeze before you can even use it. So really, you're going to have to be finding some place for these things somewhere. It doesn't sit very tall, so I mean, it's not going to take up too much space, but you got that cord. You just got to kind of wrap it around this thing, and then you got this, which I don't know. I still don't know what you're going to do with that. I see this getting lost, actually. The construction on this is nice. I like this plastic, and I really like this mint color on this. I didn't see that there were any other colors that you can get this in, which I thought was a little bit strange. But I'm not complaining because I like the mint. This is plastic construction here. The bowl on the inside is aluminum, I believe. And I don't know what the gel inside of here is made of. But I do know once you start processing ice cream in here, that stuff has got a usable life of probably about 30 minutes or so before you've got to freeze it again. So you're really not going to be able to produce 2 batches of ice cream out of one of these before having to refreeze it. You're just going to get 1. Let's talk about durability. I'm not really too terribly concerned about this motor, to be honest, because it's really not pushing a whole lot of material around. Nor am I really worried too much about this paddle. It pops in there pretty good, snaps in, and I really don't think that this is going to bend and break very easily. Well, maybe this side could, because it's going to be a lot weaker than this side. However, this bowl isn't going to freeze anything solid enough to really put that in jeopardy. If anything's going to break on it, it's probably going to be this clip at the top here. The bowls, I've gone through a whole bunch of freeze and defrost cycles with these, and they all seem pretty good. They hold their form really well, and I haven't noticed any kind of warping or anything like that. That's not something that you would expect to see anyway, but I have seen a couple of these type of ice cream makers start bulging out on the sides or on the bottom as this freezes and defrosts. And what I think is that the liquid inside those isn't getting evenly distributed. So when it freezes, there's a concentration of it in a certain area and it bulges out, and then you got a big bump. These have been really good, but also it's a good time to remind you that if you get one of these, you have to put it into your freezer nice and level like that. That way everything sits the way it's supposed to and it'll freeze properly. If it's sitting in there like this or something, probably you're going to have some of those warping issues, I would imagine. The one thing that I would be concerned about with this is these little tabs. There's one here and there's also one right over here. These are just really super thin plastic tabs, and what they're there for is if you look at this cup, you've got these little slits on the side. That's the only thing that holds this in. So this slides on top like that, and then you just twist it to lock it in. That's not going anywhere, and you got 2 of these tabs holding onto this at any given time. That's not so much the problem, but what I would imagine the problem might be is if you put this on here cockeyed, you might run the risk of tweaking this a little bit and possibly breaking one of these tabs off. And if you break one of those off, there's going to be nothing holding this down. If that's the case, when that motor spins around and the ice cream starts getting a little bit harder, it's going to spin this top right off of here. What? So word of the wise, be real careful with these tabs. Don't ever force it. Make sure that everything is down, nice and solid before you turn it in. As far as size goes, with this thing all assembled, it's 7 inches wide if you're counting the handle, and if you're not counting the handle, then it's about 6. For height, we're looking at 6.5 inches, including the button, and that means this guy is pretty small. And just so you know how loud it actually is, I have my sound meter right here for you. Yeah, that's not bad at all. Alright, for our first test, we're going to be doing some regular, full-fat, full-sugar vanilla ice cream. I've already made my mix for my vanilla ice cream. I just made a really basic recipe for this, which is just heavy cream, full-fat milk, sugar, and a little bit of vanilla extract. Most of those ingredients were already cold, so I didn't have to chill this very long. One thing about this machine is you don't want to be using room temperature ingredients for it. You want everything to be chilled. That's because we only have a certain amount of time before the cup starts to defrost, and once that happens, we're not going to get ice cream. I've got my mug right here, and that's just come directly out of the freezer. So to do this, we're going to take the top, set it right on there. You can twist it to click it into place. And we're going to be pouring all the ingredients in through here. You don't want to pour them directly in the bowl. You want this to be empty and start it up before you start putting your ingredients in. Otherwise, you run the risk of something freezing immediately to the bottom of the bowl and the paddle not being able to turn. Okay, so we'll start this up, give this a quick mix, and we'll pour this right in here. Now, all we gotta do is let this churn, and we'll check back with it in a little while. Hey, by the way, if this is your first time here and you want to learn some cool new recipes, get some great cooking tips and tricks and all sorts of other kitchen related things, then start now by subscribing to the channel and clicking the notification bell so you never miss a thing. Okay, I've let this go for a full 25 minutes. Probably didn't have to go this long, but I wanted to give this the best chance I possibly could to come out nice. Now this machine is for making soft serve ice cream, so you're not going to get scoop ice cream out of this, at least not by churning it this way. That's for a couple of reasons. Number one, you'd never get scoop consistency with a paddle like this in there because it's going to, I don't know, break the paddle if it gets hard enough to be scoopable ice cream. And second, I made a full cup of this ice cream in here, and it looks like that is the absolute maximum for this because you can see it going over the edges here. If I put any more in there, then this would likely start getting super messy. If you want to turn this into more scoopable ice cream, you could put this whole thing into the freezer for a couple of hours and it'll harden it up a little bit more, but that'll probably get the top a little bit icy too. Anyway, this is the consistency of this. I can see there's not really much stuck to the sides, which I was kind of expecting that there would be because I didn't think the paddle was going to get close enough to the edges to really scrape that off. You see that problem with Ninja Creamis and stuff where the paddle doesn't make it to the edge of the creamy pie and you got like this thin layer of hard frozen stuff over there. Here, not really seeing it there, and it's probably because this isn't super duper cold anymore just because it's been going for 25 minutes. Anyway, this is the consistency. It tastes really good. It's nice and smooth, and if you like soft serve, it's a pretty nice result. Okay, before I eat this whole thing, we should move on to our next ice cream test. Alright, for our second test, we're going to be making some protein chocolate ice cream. What I have in here is non-fat, ultra-pasteurized Carb Master milk, monk fruit sweetener, cocoa powder, a little bit of vanilla extract, and some egg yolk. With this mix, it's a little bit different because I have to heat the mix up in order to pasteurize the egg. So to get this ready, I not only had to get this back down to room temperature, but I had to leave it in the refrigerator to make it nice and cold as well. Remember, these cups don't really have active cooling. They rely totally on that frozen element, so if you put warm stuff in there, you're gonna have a really long day. Alright, so we got our cup once again. This guy goes back onto the top once again. And just like before, we have to start this up before we pour this in. And now we're back to waiting. Alright, it's been about 23 minutes. Let's check this out. You can see that that is looking, that's pretty fantastic looking actually. But you can see up here, I got all of this ice cream stuck right on the bottom here. That is because I filled this right to the 1 cup maximum. And that's probably a little bit over the max. They don't actually tell you exactly what the max is. I just had to make some estimates. There's no markings anywhere inside the bowl or anything like a max fill line or anything like that, which would have been a really nice idea on something like this. In fact, I really kind of prefer that it would be there. The ice cream looks good, but again, it is soft serve consistency, so you're not getting scoop ice cream out of this. In fact, I'm going to move this over to a different bowl so you can see it a little bit better. Get some of this out. I mean, it's great soft serve, but it is really soft. Remember, like I said before, the fact that it's got a paddle in here means you're not going to get scoopable ice cream out of this unless you put it into the freezer when you get done and harden it up a little bit more for a couple of hours. Also with this chocolate, I didn't run it as long as I did with the vanilla, and you can see an awful lot of ice cream sticking to the sides here. I could scrape this down with my spoon, but if I do that, I'll probably scratch up this aluminum bowl in here. We don't want to do that. If I try to use the spatula, that's just not going to be strong enough. You can deal with that a couple of different ways. First, you can either just run it long enough to where this starts to defrost a little bit and that'll loosen right up, or you can just let that get discarded and rinse the bowl out and be done with it. Here's a better look at this. The texture's good. Nice soft serve. Remember, this is sugar-free ice cream. You can see even in the texture, it's a little bit more airy, and that's probably because this doesn't really have any fat in it at all. Overall though, pretty nice. Okay, for our last test, we're gonna make some strawberry sorbet. All I used for this was some fresh strawberries, some simple syrup, and a little bit of lemon juice. Once I had all of those together, I just stuck them in a blender, and here we go. Okay, so cup, machine, start it up, and we'll pour in our mix. From this point by now, you know the drill. Okay, let's check out this sorbet. It came off pretty clean. That's a pretty good looking sorbet. Tastes good too. Put this into this bowl here, so it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. And see, I did manage to get just about all of it out of here just with the spatula. Okay, there we go. Not too bad at all. However, if you want to make sorbet, you don't really need a machine like this. You could take frozen fruit and put them into a blender and then just mix that with a little bit of lemon juice and the simple syrup like I just did with this. And as long as you don't use too much liquid, you'll end up with consistency almost exactly like this, maybe a little bit thicker. But this is really good anyway. The Dash My Mug ice cream maker is a pretty neat little gadget, but it does have a few pretty big limitations. First, there's the obvious, it only has that 1 cup capacity. Second, since that capacity is so low, you're going to be severely limited as to how much ice cream you can make before you have to refreeze those cups. In my case, if I use both mugs, I can make about 1 pint. And third, you're pretty much going to be limited to soft serve ice cream. You can always take your soft serve, put it into the freezer and harden it up a little bit, but when you do that, it just kind of ends up a little bit on the icy side and is nowhere near a really good quality scoop. But if you love soft serve, you don't want to spend a lot of money, and you only got 1 or 2 people in the house to serve it to, this could be pretty compelling. If you'd like a little bit more information about the Dash My Mug ice cream maker, I do have an Amazon affiliate link for it down in the description of the video. If you buy anything through those links, I do make a small commission, but it doesn't change the price that you pay 1 cent. If you like this video, I bet you'll love this review video right here that I did for a compressor-based ice cream machine. It works on a really similar premise to this machine, except the bowl is cooled by a compressor instead of having to put it in the freezer. That means no pre-freezing and a whole lot less waiting. Well, that's it for now. I hope to see you back again here really soon, and until that time, I'm Joe, and I hope you have a phenomenal day. Take it easy.